So Nancy Shaffer in our reading today says that night is the test, when grief lies uncovered and longing shows clear, when nothing we do can hasten earth's turning or delay it. I like that image of night being the test. It's why during Holy Week we have our services at night. Right? We do Maundy Thursday here at this church, and other churches do Good Friday, Holy Saturday, which turns into Easter Vigil in the morning, and they all are at night, a time when we all feel more vulnerable. And it was at night when Jacob had his encounter with the stranger. And then they fought. And Jacob was injured in the hip. And then finally, the man says to Jacob, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." And Jacob says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me. I will not let you go unless you bless me." Now, I'm sure that when I was planning this service, when we made our list of topics, I had a specific plan, an idea for what I wanted to talk about today. This is a series about current issues, after all, and particularly ones that need further examination before they drop out of our rapidly moving news cycle. But whatever the specific story was that captured my imagination, it seems to have disappeared from my mind well before I could know what it actually was. But that's okay. That's okay, because the issue of mental illness and that of addiction lie buried deep inside many of our political and social debates today. For example, we can see these issues in the background of arguments over gun control and health care and workers' rights. People struggling with addiction and mental illness, or at least stereotypes of them, are also stock parts in other issues like homelessness and lives of extreme poverty. And stereotypes are part of what I want to talk about today because they poison our public discourse. Addiction and mental illness are different from each other in many respects, of course, but both do have something in common, as they both carry a stigma about them, reinforced by popular culture that is hard for us to shake. In film and television, both conditions are used as simple and perhaps lazy stand-ins, as shorthand tropes for the depiction of evil. Why does the bad guy keep killing people? Because he's deranged. Why do the youth, most often minority youth, it should be noted, want to attack and rob our heroes? Well, of course, they need drug money. And if they are not depicted as criminals, they are most often treated as weak, as losers in the parlance of our day. And while things are getting better, and they are, to grapple with these particular foes in our own lives is still frequently to do so in isolation, in fear of the labels that come with too long a public airing. It is hard. It is hard to talk about this stuff. Even though, were we to be honest with ourselves, we are much more intimately familiar with them than we might at first like to admit. Take mental illness, for example. 61.5 million people, 61.5 million people in this country, according to at least one reputable source, experience a mental health disorder in any given year. Which means If we haven't ourselves, then certainly we know someone who recently has. Statistics for drug and alcohol addiction, while they vary depending on the source and exactly what they're studying, are at least as high as those for mental illness. But we don't really need the numbers. We don't really need the numbers to accept that people suffering from these afflictions live close to and in our homes, our workplaces, our schools. They are part of our lives, and in fact, they are us. In spite of the way we have chosen to treat these topics by holding them away from our bodies and speaking of them as if the problem lies out there in some indistinct community foreign to our own, addiction and mental illness are woven into every human community. And we need to find ways to acknowledge and address them. Now, if we want to be activists in this area, there are plenty of organizations that we can assist if we wish. Those of us with children in the Natick school system either are or should be aware of Natick Together for Youth, for example, an organization that addresses substance abuse among local teens. And also there are bigger organizations like the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, or NAMI for short. However, this is also Lent. And during Lent, we try for a change in personal perspective and personal attitude as well. That is, we need to work to alter our own behavior. We need to find ways to, in the language of NAMI, we need to find ways to stop the stigma. And for that task, we can use our faith. We can use our faith. Now, for some, it may mean talking about our own struggles in the same matter-of-fact way that we speak of our physical ailments, backaches, and other conditions. For others, it may mean learning to listen to and respond in appropriate ways to those conversations. And to do that, we must remind ourselves that if we have experienced addiction or mental illness, that doesn't make us any worse or any more flawed than anyone else. And if we do not have those experiences, we must remind ourselves of the exact same thing. None of us really is any better than another human, after all. And we all, if we are living lives of authenticity, we all will find ourselves wrestling with demons and angels at some point in our lives, or even perhaps continuously. And the only difference is that some of those angels and demons that we wrestle carry a societal burden of judgment as well as a personal one, and some just don't. Now, I said demons and angels for a reason. As I mentioned earlier in our reading this morning, the entity Jacob struggles with is merely described as a man. And in some sense, this stranger is both demon and angel. From this man, Jacob receives his scars. From this man, he receives the pain of a dislocated hip. But in the end, in what seems to me at least to be a conditional victory, basically a pin, a conditional victory and maybe a draw, Jacob receives a blessing and a new name, which is a good thing because sometimes a draw is the best we can hope for in life. Jacob receives a new name, that of Israel. For, as the mysterious figure tells us, you have striven with God and with humans. You see, the struggles we take on in life change us. They hurt us. But they also help us to grow, to be authentically ourselves. Like Jacob, we receive that new name and recognize our own strength in the midst of weakness. Like Jacob, we receive a new name, and we see our strength in our weakness. So when we look at someone struggling with depression, or even more commonly, anxiety, or when we look at someone struggling with alcohol or drugs or food, we should see someone just like us. Someone seeking a blessing and a new name, a new beginning. Now, in those moments, we may also see someone who is in need of our assistance. There are parts of the fight that are inevitably fought alone, just like Jacob and the mysterious stranger. But a network of support is always welcome. But we also see someone. We see someone who demands neither our judgment nor our pity. Instead, they demand our respect and our willingness to learn from them. In our Genesis story, there was a way in which Israel, the person, was still Jacob, the person. But in another way, he was not. Israel was Jacob altered by grace, by experience, and by the wisdom he gained from that struggle. A great deal happened in his fight and transformation that in our tradition we still draw on today. And what of our own struggles? How do we carry our own burdens? How do we gain our own new name? This too is a struggle of faith. For in the end, passing through the darkness requires us to believe in some sort of light. In 2 Corinthians, Paul reminds us that as human beings, we walk by faith, not by sight. We walk by faith, not by sight. No matter what the particulars of our theology, or if you prefer, your life philosophy, no matter what our metaphysical beliefs, we know we cannot see our ultimate destination, but instead, we live in hope. Hope that we will get to where we want to go. And that takes work. The work of Jacob, in some sense, became the work of Israel. And this is the path we find ourselves on, too. Now, Bronson Alcott tells us that body is merely spirit at its circumference. Body is spirit at its circumference. Which is to say that by plunging deep into ourselves, we can find our own divine spark and the strength to wrestle our angels and demons. And we must remember that even though we are strengthened by our struggle, those struggles continue for each of us. And that recognition of an ongoing wrestling match with what holds us down should help strengthen our humility. And that our humility should enable us to reach out with open minds and open hearts with a sense of connection to our fellow travelers. To reach out in support of those who need our support. For the fight against the demons of our lives.